Hey guys, I'm doing well today. So yeah, this is episode 11 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself as well as the Kiwi lads. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, mate. Big game coming up just around the corner. Box versus ABs. It's a game that I'm fearing for and also excited for at the same time. Injuries hopefully won't be a huge factor in this one, but there's a high chance we sadly see at least one in this first match.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what could happen really, because this game is going to be pretty big actually. It's kind of crazy to think that we're actually going to have New Zealand versus South Africa really. What was it, like a week before really, before the Rugby World Cup? It's kind of crazy to think we're actually going to have this game. I understand obviously it's going to be probably because of the money, of course. They want to get some money in before, I guess, the Rugby World Cup, and they're not obviously going to turn that down. But yeah, no, it's going to be exciting to see what happens here, because again, both these sides look pretty good at the moment. I'd say, obviously the Boks coming off that win against the Welsh in a pretty comparable fashion, to say the least. And of course, the All Blacks, they won the Rugby Championships. They're doing pretty well at the moment, I'd say, in terms of like their recent form. But again, they haven't played a game since then. So maybe this is a game which, I don't know, like normally you would say the All Blacks, like they would be like they'd be the favorite going into this, I'd say. But because I think they have to get some rust off them. I think the Bucks actually have a chance in this, and I think again you have to remember that whenever these two sides play, it's a pretty close game. But I guess first of all, like, what do you think? Like, do you think it'll be like a close game here, or do you think it'll be kind of a wide margin maybe between one of these two sides?
I feel like it's a very hard game to predict, and even when looking at the lineups, I still can't decide what I think is going to happen in this game.
Yeah.
And I haven't had that kind of feeling since the first time they played in the Rugby Championship, and actually the only time that they played in the
Yeah.
Rugby Championship. But it's just one of those games that South Africa, I feel they've gone with the stronger forward pack, whereas the All Blacks, I think they've gone with the stronger back line. So depending on the tactics of the two sides, how they want to try and play this game may be the big factor in who actually walks away with the victory. And of course, both sides want to get that victory just before the Rugby World Cup. I mentioned it on another video, and I said that if the All Blacks lose this game, perhaps they are a side that after losing it have got a good chance of going all the way. But the same for the Springboks. I feel like if they lose this game, they'll be fired up beyond belief and they'll want to go all the way in front. So yeah, there's a lot on the line, but it's also all about finding those combinations still, giving people game time just before a big competition. And here's something we didn't predict. 6-2 split
Exactly. I
off
was
the
about
bench
to
for
go
the
on
All
to that.
Blacks.
6-2. Like what?
We
Like the
joked
All
about
Blacks.
it, but we didn't think they'd actually do it. They also went with Dane Coles at number 2, which we also
Yeah,
joked about. So
as soon as I
we're
saw his
just
name, I was
jokesters,
like,
aren't
what?
we?
It's like, okay, it's just our luck to like where we both like, nah, he's definitely not gonna get named. We both choose Cody Taylor, and we also go with what Takalaho off the bench. Dan
Mm.
Coles, do we put him in? No, not even an afterthought. And of course, he's the guy who starts this one. So there you go. but but I guess, like, yeah, in terms of the All Blacks, because I guess they've already named their squad as well. And I mean, the only really big omissions from their part is really what you have: Cody Taylor, Retallick, as well as Shannon Vazel. But besides that, it's pretty much a fully, strength kind of like squad there. And I guess you are right in saying that they probably have the better back line, I'd say, compared to the Bucks. But I mean, it's gonna be interesting because there's a few battles in there which I'm really intrigued to see who kind of comes out on top, because in all honesty, actually, the one I'm actually looking forward towards most actually is the 13 battle between Rieko Ioane as well as Caden Moody, because Caden
Mm.
Moody is now, he could actually become, the Rieko of, the box in terms of that back line where, like I've done a bit more, I guess, like research on him now. And then, a lot of people have actually said he's a pretty good tackler, actually. Yeah. So look, I'm pretty excited to see that battle, really, because I mean, look, Caden Moody, both of them are pretty electric. But I think if there's one player that can probably stop Rieko in terms of that, I guess, 13 battle, it's probably Caden Moody. So I think it's a good battle to watch. I guess in terms of the other ones in that back line, Will Jordan's obviously going to be, is probably going to be a player to look out for, as he always is. But I wouldn't be surprised if Bowden Barrett is actually involved in this game a lot, because there's always that battle between, I can see a battle between him and Willie LaRue in terms of 15 spots. So I'm pretty excited to see what happens there. But what about you in terms of the back line? What would you say are kind of the ones to watch battles?
Well, I've heard someone talking about the fact that with Mark Talia at 11, I feel like The reasoning they seem to think was because they wanted the All Blacks to try and wear down the Boks and be a little bit more aggressive with it. But I would have thought having Whainā Nuku at 11, having him try and bulldoze over the top of Kurtley Orinsa would have worn them down that a little bit more. So I think the All Blacks are going with pretty similar to what they will want to have in that first game up against France. The only player I can see really getting swapped is Mark Talia if they want to go with a bit more size. But then saying that, Mark Talia up against Damien Pinot is a battle that I think
That's a great
might
battle.
actually work in Mark Talia's favour rather than Whainā Nuku, even though Whainā Nuku has got that pace. But Anton Leonard-Brown off the bench at 23, probably one of the more surprising ones for the All Blacks for myself, mainly because Havili's just come back from injury, so you'd think they'd try and give him some minutes under his belt before heading into the Rugby World Cup.
I had Anton Leonard-Brown in. I was
Well,
like, when I saw it, I was like, what? Gosh, Hamish, what are you doing, man? But
I don't think anyone was predicting the two locks, though, in Tupavai and Josh Lord both being available.
Yeah, so really, I think just when it comes to this game, I mean, there's not really any home advantage because, again, this game's been played within Twickenham, so there really is no kind of extra, I guess, uplift that these two sides can get. But I guess, there is obviously a lot of Kiwis as well as a lot of, South African fans, obviously, based anyway in England. So there will be a big support there on that front. But I guess in terms of the forward pack, because there's a few players I can mention on my count who I think could stand out in this game. But I want to come first to you. Who do you think is going to be kind of like the one to watch player from the forward pack for both these sides?
See, South Africa, they've got quite a few players that could easily get that mention, whether that's Stephen Kitsoff with his scrummaging game and also those turnovers in the breakdown he's able to get. Malcolm Marx at number 2, he is a phenomenal talent. I'm sure he will be one that they watch out for this World Cup. Although, for me, I think it's got to be the big man at number 4, Eben Etzebeth. The reason I say that is I've seen that he's pretty much said, yes, the World Cup's just around the corner, but this game up against the All Blacks, we want to win it. We want to get that one under the belt. And he's just going to bring that really physical game. Sam Whitelock at 4, just coming back from injury, huge amount of experience on both sides, over 100 caps. But I think it's going to be later in the game with the fact, I mean, it's tricky because both sides have gone with 2 locks off the bench. We could see Mostert maybe transition to number 7. But to be honest, I'm very curious to see how the second half goes with how they do inject these new players into the lineup, because I would assume that New Zealand, they've also got the option of putting Barrett to 6. Etzebeth, I think he's going to go out firing for the first maybe 50 or so minutes, and then they might go to Jean Klein as the man to replace him. But I believe for those first 50 minutes, he is going to be absolutely brilliant, and I look forward to seeing what he can do. If the Springboks can get a little bit of dominance going at line-out time, then that is where they'll really start to find those meters, because if you have Malcolm Marx thrown at 90+% accuracy, the big 4-pack alongside it, it's going to be a lot of fun. The All Blacks, though, they'll be looking to try and defend that, which could be relatively tricky to do. Like I mentioned, I think they might have that little bit of an edge in their backline just with that experience. Yeah, Etzebeth, the man I'm going with in that 4-pack. I didn't give you an All Black, did I?
Yeah, it's a good call. It's a good call. But in terms of the All Blacks, who do you think as well?
So for the All Blacks in the 4-pack, who needs the biggest game, I believe, would be Luke Jacobson, because he'll want to try and say, if Shannon Frizzell is injured for a while, I'm still here. Someone else who needs a big game is probably Sam Whitelock, seeing as he is just back from that injury. With no Retallick in the first couple games, you want to have someone with that experience head, even though Barrett does also offer that relatively. But yeah, I'm gonna say Luke Jacobson. I feel like he's still got a few doubters at the moment, and I'm hoping he's going to do a Jesse Creel from last week and make everyone go, we'll be right. He should be able to get the job done.
Understand. Yeah, no, I'm similar to you, really. Like, where I from an All Black position, I definitely think it's the Luke Jacobson one, which is probably the one to watch player in that sense, because he's, we had a debate really in terms of who was going to be in that 6th position, because I went with Dr. Papali there. You went with Luke Jacobson. Jacobson is the one who gets the start. So it's going to be fascinating to see what he can obviously do. And again, I'm not saying he's going to be a starter, in my opinion, I'd say, for this Rugby World Cup. But a performance against the Boks in this game could, maybe put him up the ranks in terms of maybe like getting some more minutes, you could say, in the Rugby World Cup. So yeah, I kind of hope he has a good game. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with him. But I know from a Bok perspective, I mean, Yeah, I mean, Eben Smith versus Whitelock is going to be probably a very key battle in this game for sure. So I'm not going to disagree with you on that front. But I mean, I kind of, I don't know why, but I'm actually thinking of Franz Herbert actually as my ones to watch player. I'd say from this game, because him versus the likes of Ethan de Groot, and as well as Tyrell Lomax. I mean, that's a big battle in that sense in terms of that scrum. And when I look back at that scrum, I mean, the Boks are normally known as the best team in the world, I'd say, in terms of that scrum. I mean, they're known for their set pieces, particularly off the scrum. But when they faced against the All Blacks, actually, when they what was it? Was it Napier? I think it was. I can't remember where it was in New Zealand when they played. But I know when they played in New Zealand, I think it was in Auckland actually. But when they played there, they didn't have as much momentum, you could say, in terms of that scrum. Yes, they won a few, but I think if you count actually the amount of scrums overall, I think actually New Zealand actually won on that front. I think they won at least it was 4-3 or something like that. So it's kind of bad from a Bok position, because you never want to be at the just losing end, you could say, of those scrums in terms of that set piece. So I
feel like that's exactly how every team feels when they play the Boks, though.
Exactly.
They were just constantly going backwards. It's almost the other way around. You're like, no, we can't have that. That's not allowed. Think of Wales, poor Wales. They were walking backwards during those scrums.
Yeah, I'm hoping that game, kind of uplifted, you could say, that the scrums, and at least kind of a bomb squad. Cause as soon as they came on, they just, they wiped the floor with them as well. So I'm kind of hoping we can have the same thing against the All Blacks in this one. But before we kind of move on from this game, because again, we have a lot of other games we'll talk about. Like, what do you think in terms of the score for this? Do you think it'll be what's your prediction really?
It's tricky. Like I said, this game is one that I feel has every type of score available at the moment for it, whether that's going to be a high-scoring game, low-scoring. These two sides, they've both said they don't want to go out there and put anything less than 100% into this contest. I think that the backline for the All Blacks is where they are going to have that little bit of an edge. But then saying that, if this young backline of the Boks is able to fire, then all of a sudden there's a whole new threat heading into that Rugby World Cup. And they've got, I guess, security knowing that even if they have to make a lot of changes, these young guys are going to be able to perform. Canan Moody at 13, Kurtley Arinsa number 14. They've got the experience of Mapimpi out on that left wing. Lebok, huge amount of pressure on his kicking. I feel like there shouldn't be as much pressure on him as people are making there be. At the end of the day, yes, he's not kicking well off the kicking tee, but he's still been able to get himself a few assists in the other games. So as long as he's still getting those assists, I don't hugely see the massive problem. Yes, getting 3-pointers and 2-pointers in the Rugby World Cup games is going to be crucial. But in these warm-up games, it's more about just trying to find the confidence to back him. Because if Andre Pollard isn't going to be at that World Cup, which I feel is still not even confirmed whether or not he is going to be there, if he's not going to be available, you can't change it. Lebok's the 10. There's no one else at the moment other than Valimza, but when he was 10, he wasn't allowed the kicking tee. So I feel like the Boks supporters, they've got to get behind him. At the end of the day, he is the option. He's the player that if there is a moment in the final match of the competition and he nails a 3-pointer, he's the player everyone's going to be loving. But you need to make sure they're supporting him even if he's not going too flash.
Yeah, no, actually, I just realized that going into this, it's actually Will Root isn't actually the one who's starting, right? It's actually Damien Williamson. He's actually the one who's starting at 15. So, yeah, scratch that from what I said before, guys. I mean, that battle between him and Bowden Barrett is probably the one I'm looking out for in terms of that back line position. But I guess it's going to be weird because Will Root normally does partner up with Lebok. So it's going to be – I can't even remember the last time we saw Williamson and Lebok together, because I think
it was the first Argentinian game.
Was it?
But then also they do play with each other in the Stormers.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying.
I didn't word that well. They play in the same backline for the Stormers.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to watch, and yeah, I'm excited for that game as well. But yeah, we'll move on then towards the next one.
See how I managed to dodge the score prediction.
you keep scratching over it. You just you give a long monologue and it's
and then just slowly just drifted off to the next game. Okay, how about them Fijians? No, for this game, I said, but I'm not confident. I'm going to say the All Blacks just narrowly take it, but then it's going to fire the Boks up and they're going to go very well in this World Cup. So I'm going to say New Zealand win at 24 points to 19, but I could easily see it being the other way around. And
Okay.
maybe there is a bit of rust, like you mentioned, for the ABs, although they just seem to be one of those sides that rust normally doesn't really hit them in the first game after being away for a while. It's actually sometimes that second or third game where they really start to struggle because they know their combinations, but then they don't seem to quite work. So
Yeah, understand.
I'm saying narrow victory, and I feel like my mind's changing just about as much as my lighting has throughout this podcast so far. Apologies for that. Seems to be that if I sit back, it turns dark. If I sit forward, it goes light.
But yeah, no, essentially, I guess from my point of view, I guess like if I was to say a prediction for this game, I mean, again, it's a tough call because again, I do think it'll be a close scoreline no matter what. I mean, for me, I'm just looking at that all black line really, and just like, geez, that is a very good back line, and it's going to be pretty dangerous against, I guess, the Box because the Box aren't really going with their first choice, let's say, back line. At the end of the day, they're making a few they're making a few, I guess, switches around there. In all honesty, so I don't know. I think normally you wouldn't say a back line dictates the game. It's normally the forward pack. So in my mind, I'd say, okay, you know what, the Box actually do have a chance in this, but I don't know. Just have a funny feeling that back line for the All Blacks could decide this game. So yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards the All Blacks winning this game. But I also want the Box to just. I thought that they can pip it, they can, because they have a bit more, they're not getting the rust off. They really got the rust off on that Wales game. So you know what? I'm actually going to go with the Box. I think it'll be like I don't know. I'm gonna say I'll say 26 points to 23. I'll go something like that. 26 points to 23. And that's
Nice.
kind of like
So we're both very close in the score, aren't we?
Yeah,
and that
like
seems to
somewhere around
always
there.
be the way people predict the All Blacks versus Springboks. It's never like someone to win by 20 points. It's always someone to win by 5 or less.
Exactly.
And that is why with this game being so close to the World Cup, I feel like it's almost like a prelim, but it's like a main event of a prelim card before we head towards just the massive, massive occasion. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, we'll move on then towards, I guess, the rest of the games, which are part of the Summer Nation series. We'll first start off with the England versus Fiji game. Again, that's a pretty exciting one, actually. It's one of those where I have a funny feeling, and this is, I could be wrong in this sense, but I'm going to show my cards already. I actually do think Fiji could win this game. I actually think they have a good shot in winning this game, guys. And maybe I'm just, I don't know. Am I overrating? No, maybe I'm not overrating. I think maybe I'm underrating what England can do in this game. But I don't know. Just from what I've seen within the previous results, against the Welsh as well as the Irish. I mean, they haven't really shown that they've been able to kind of attack. Really in the sense of they haven't had a lot of tries scored within a lot of their games. So if they are to win this game, it's going to be obviously through the tries, but they're going to have to work on their combinations because, even I was watching, the Good, the Bad, and the Rugby, the other podcast. Definitely you should check that out, by the way, if you haven't. And they were mentioning on there how, they haven't really worked on their attacking plays. And if they don't do that going into this Rugby World Cup, it's going to be really an issue for them. But I don't know. I think this is a good game for England to kind of work on that because, Fiji's obviously a great opponent because they're always, they like to play kind of a free-flowing kind of rugby, which is all, we all like that as a rugby fan. But at the same time, I think Fiji, they're kind of improving as the months have gone by, and that's obviously due to the having Fiji Dura doing so well this year. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for it. I mean, what are you? I mean, are you pretty excited for this game, or do you think it's one of those games where it's going to be just an easy England win? Kind of just you don't look back at it at the future. Like, what do you think?
I think everyone's waiting for that big English performance. But we've been waiting since almost the start of the Six Nations, and it still seems like it's just somewhere. And I'm wondering whether or not, I mean, we know Farrell's now suspended, or at least he's got a few more matches that he's going to be banned for.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Billy Vunipola now going to be out. To be honest, he was just giving away so many penalties while he was playing as well. I mentioned about how it just didn't seem like he wanted to get to that World Cup. But for England, they're having changes not just due to poor discipline, but also due to injuries. I feel Jack Van Porfleet was probably a player they were looking to really build their backline around, and now unfortunately injured. Doesn't mean Ben Youngs comes back in. Not exactly a bad guy to have there with all the experience. England they just need something, don't they? They need a little light to go off or something that gives them some sort of hope going into this Rugby World Cup. Because currently people are talking about them maybe not even getting out of the group stages. which, I mean, it's going to be
can't believe they're thinking
relatively
of
tough for
all
them
of
to
them.
do that.
Yeah.
But
It's
who
crazy.
knows? Maybe it's a possibility. The Fijians, I feel they played a lot better up against France than a lot of people thought that they would.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that they will be able to stand up in this game up against the English as well, mainly because for Fiji, they've built a nice little curve. And yes, they weren't able to get that victory over France, but they showed a lot of people that, hey, these guys can push a team if they can get it right. They were a little bit unlucky in that game as well with the fact that they didn't go upstairs for a clear red card, which I don't know whether or not anything came for Yui Antonio after that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, it was a big decision actually, but I think also a lot of of the judgment you could say and a lot of the decision making around Owen Farrell as well as Benny Villapolo maybe got on the heads of maybe the officials in that sense. Where do you want to add more? Fire to the to the press and everything about rugby. Just with Rugby World Cup around the horizon. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting because again, Owen Farrell, officially now. Well, he's not banned, but he's kind of out now. Going to be for 4 games. That does mean that he'll be not available for the first 2 games of the Rugby World Cup, which we'll probably talk a lot more in the detail. By the way, guys, we're going to probably have a Rugby World Cup kind of episode for you guys. I'm not even sure how we'll do it. We may have to split it. We'll see what happens on that front, but look out for that because we'll definitely give you a lot more content on that sense. But I guess just going off this game, it's going to be pretty interesting what happens because I actually thought Danny Kerr was someone that actually may go with on that 9 spot because I would have liked to see him and Marcus Smith actually together because I think that that duo we've seen a lot obviously with the Harlequins. I just want to see maybe that could work out again. What I saw from the highlights and what people have said in the press is that Danny Kerr probably looks like the best option at 9. Obviously now with Jack Van Voifley out for the Rugby World Cup, in my opinion, he's the guy I'd actually go with because I think if you're going to start with Marcus Smith at the number 10, or if you go with someone else, maybe you go with George Ford, then maybe if you go with George Ford, maybe it's a bit different because maybe that's when I'd say maybe go with Ben Youngs because they have that chemistry anyway because that was the 9-10 combination anyway for the Rugby World Cup. So maybe that's what you go with. But I don't know. You can maybe have Danny Kerr and Marcus Smith off the bench if you even add to. But I feel like having Marcus Smith off the bench is kind of crazy because he's just he's a natural. So it's gonna be interesting to see you actually picking that 10 jersey. What about you? Who would you pick in that 10 jersey? Would you go with Marcus Smith or would you go with George Ford?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because Ford, like you mentioned, has the experience, whereas Marcus Smith is a little bit more of the Finn Russell-esque player of you don't really know what he's going to do, but he can certainly light that backline on fire. Also, the Harlequins, if you did have Danny Kerr, Marcus Smith, we've got to remember Joe Marchant at number 13 as well. So you've got almost half your backline being just as the Quins. It's as if at the moment, no matter what they select, something just isn't quite working. And they need that to be working by the time we get to the World Cup. Their opening game, it's going to be up against Argentina. That is not an easy fixture to have. And I do hope... Oh, you're really zoned in. I thought you were frozen, but you were just really focused. I was stopping my train of thought because I was like, hang on,
my camera's the screen's down here, so I have to look at this camera, or else it just looks bizarre. Where I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this game because there's a lot to prove for both sides, and I guess that perfectly transitions into the next game that we are going to be talking about, which is Scotland versus Georgia. Now, just before this podcast, I mentioned to you, I feel like there is so much on the line for both of these teams. Scotland, because they are in a very tough group alongside Ireland, South Africa, Tonga, and Romania. So they want to make sure that they're racking up a few wins before they get into that World Cup. Whereas Georgia, they have always been considered the dark horse of Pool C, alongside Fiji, Wales, Australia, and Portugal. And if they can get a big victory over Scotland, that all of a sudden puts them on the map as, hang on, the Scottish side were able to push France a few weeks ago. Yes, some would say maybe not completely the strongest lineup that France could have put out there, but still a monumental comeback that we saw from Scotland. So yeah, I think both of these sides are going to go out there and absolutely just play their hearts out. Hopefully no injuries, hopefully no suspensions as well. It's actually become more over the last couple of weeks, we've become less worried with injuries and more worried about bans for certain players.
Yeah,
Like it seems like there's a little bit of a
yellow card or a red card.
seesaw.
But
You see Scotland getting over the line for this game, do you think? Or do you think
Yeah,
Georgia will surprise a lot of people?
I think for this game, it's going to be pretty difficult to select because I think the obvious answer said, yeah, Scotland will win this with ease. Because again, I think this game is being played within Scotland, if I'm correct. But again, you kind of bring up the points where with Georgia, like they could make it if they get, if they win this game, like oh my gosh, this is like a huge win going into the Rugby World Cup because they kind of make that group now with what is it, Australia, Wales as well as Fiji. They kind of make a 4-horse kind of like group in the sense like where all 4 of these teams have a chance. So. Because normally, I think like when you look at the predictions at the moment from a lot of people, it's normally between the top 3 with Fiji, Wales, and Australia. But if Georgia win this, then I do actually think they kind of come into the conversation now because they're like something you can back them up really in this sense. So I think this would be a big win for them if they were to do it. I mean, it's going to be a tough job, by the way. I mean, I'm not saying they can't do this, by the way, guys, but it's going to be tough because the Scottish are normally pretty good when they're at home. That's kind of like one of their. They're just kind of they're kryptonite to other teams really when they play at home at Murrayfield. But no, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited for this game. Again, I'm excited to see what Finn Russell can do, especially because with him at the 10, it's always gonna be a good game to watch. So yeah, it should be a good game overall. I mean, again, I'm not saying this would. I actually don't think this would be a high scoring game. I actually think it'll be like a close game in terms of the margin. Like maybe like it's separated by like, I don't know, like 10 points or maybe by like 7 points. I can see that. But if Georgia does win this, then I can see it being like just by like 2 points or 3 points. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. So yeah, we'll move on then towards the next game. I believe it is Italy versus Japan. It'll be a pretty good game actually to watch. I'm pretty excited for that one. Again, I mean, both these sides, it's kind of weird because in the past, you'd normally say the opposite thing where Japan would be the team on top and Italy are kind of just, not doing well at the moment. But actually, it's the complete opposite where Italy are actually in good form at the moment, having that big results against Romania last week. And, obviously Capuzzo now back for them and he was, brilliant as usual. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting because Japan just have not been the team which people expect them to be, following that, the previous World Cup. And since then, they've just their form has been arguably one of the, I hate to say it, but one of the worst actually in terms of what you expect as a top 10 nation. And are they even in the top 10 anymore? I'm not even sure they're part of the top 10.
I think they may be 11th at the moment.
Yeah,
I think they might have lost their
spot. I could be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, I think Fiji took their place, or at least Samoa, one of the two. But yeah, no, it's gonna be a good game to watch. I'm actually pretty excited for this game. Hopefully, this game is good for Japan in a sense where they can actually get a uplift at least because they've had a lot of disappointing results to say the least. So if they can get a win here against the Italians, then at least that kind of puts them in a good sense, a good mood going into this. Going into the group stages because they have to go into the likes of England, Argentina. They're going into the likes of Samoa as well. I believe it's Chile in the group as well. So yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what they can do. But I mean, what about you? What are you like? What do you think about this game? Like, do you think it'll be a good game overall, or do you think it's going to be just a game you kind of I don't know, watch back at the highlights? Like, what do you think?
I think it should be relatively even. I've actually just looked it up, and Japan are 14th. In the World Rugby rankings.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that is a lot lower than a lot of people would have been anticipating. They are taking on the Italians, who are 13th, though. So the good news is, because of the small split between these two teams, whoever wins this game more than likely will stay above the other, getting into that Rugby World Cup.
Well, yeah.
But it's just, like you said, Japan just haven't been able to find that rhythm that we are used to seeing. And yes, sometimes they do struggle a bit, but then they seem to have those big games where they can cause upsets. I remember when they were playing up against New Zealand last year and they were all but able to get themselves their first historic victory over the ABs, but they missed out. And then since then, we haven't really seen that same upset kind of brewing for them in any of their contests. They had that tight game with Samoa. They are currently ranked 12th up against the Fijians. Fiji just looked like they were a league above. But then saying that, there was a card, and I think that is something that has hurt Japan a little bit, their discipline. Some of the big players for them have been getting penalised and red carded, and then they are playing the rest of the game with 14, just like their ranking. But I think this is going to be a relatively close game. I think Italy will be able to get away with the victory, though. They played well up against Ireland, even though Ireland, we have seen a couple shaky performances from the Irish, I would say, compared to what people were expecting them to be able to pick up from where they left off. But, yeah, I'll give this one to the Italians.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. But, yeah, well, then moving on towards the next game, which is Ireland versus Samoa. I mean, that's going to be a good game no matter what. I mean, again, it's probably, in my mind, this is actually a better, it's a more useful game actually for the Samoans, actually, when you look at it, because the Samoans, I mean, like, they have a good squad, by the way, guys. You can never underestimate what, the kind of the squad they have now. And, they obviously have the additions of, Lima Samoa. They have, Stephen Luatua in there. They got, gosh, who else do they have? They have, just spit them out to me. Like, who else did they have there?
They had Ben Lamb, but he got injured in the last game, unfortunately.
I was so disappointed because I really wanted them to be part of the Rugby World Cup. That's just disappointing. Hey, Jordan Lay. I mean, I know that's not a notable player, but from the Blues, just want to mention him. But
had to throw one in there.
Yeah, well, just throw that in there. But no, they have one more player. Don't they? They have.
Well, they have a few more than just the 1 year. Who are you thinking, like international wise? Charlie Faumuina?
No, he wasn't the one.
No.
I'm thinking of the backline.
The backline. They've got all the regulars: Naria Famai, Ed Fidel, Danny Tuala.
Yeah, Danny Tuala is. I mean,
I haven't ticked them off, have I? There's a certain player you've got in your head.
I thought there was someone else they had.
Just to confirm, you're not thinking of Malakai Feketau for Tonga?
No.
Okay,
Trust me, I know for Samoa, out of all the squads in terms of the Pacific Islands, they have the least amount of players in terms of players who kind of transferred over to this squad. Because I know for Tonga, for example, they probably have what you could probably say the most actually out of the whole bunch. But
right, I've got the whole team, Tim.
Okay, let's see.
Right, Christian Laliafano.
That's it.
Oh, okay.
That's the one. See, I knew it was from the back line. I was like, who is it? There's one more player who's come in, but that's it. Yeah, no, it'll be good to see what he can do because again, it's interesting because the only problem with him though is that when you play him at 15, I actually don't see him as a 15. He's really more of a 10. So, and then you're also going to play some along with this. So, I kind of feel bad for him because he's going to be probably off the bench really for this. But I guess it's not that too. It's not too bad. Obviously, because it gives you more depth in that sense. But I guess for this game, what do you think? From an Irish standpoint, do you think it's a good game for them to obviously go into? Do you think they'll probably go? Do you think they'll go with their best squad here, or do you think it'll just be more of one of those games where it's more of a warm up match to say the least? What do you say?
I think that they'll go with a bit of a mixed side because there were a few of the mainstay players who weren't quite out on their A game up against the English, but I think they'll make a few changes just to try and rotate through the squad. Front row-wise, we did see that injury of Dan Sheehan. I believe they actually brought in another hooker just in case. Although I don't think it's serious enough for him to miss the World Cup. I think it's just a little bit of a strain there.
Yeah, it's like 2 weeks, or maybe a week at most, really. It's something like that.
So I think that Ireland, they'll make a few changes. The loose forward trio, I think we'll start to see maybe a couple other names added in there. I honestly feel like this game, Samoa have much more to gain, although they also have a lot more to lose, I believe. And I'm not talking about the result. I'm talking about player injuries because in that game between Samoa and the Barbarians, the Samoans ended up injuring 3 players. One was on their team. The other 2 were playing for the Barbarians. They ended up losing Tim Nanai-Williams and Jack Lamb due to injury, which were 2 injury replacements that they were going to bring in if they injured their own team.
It's pretty smart. Pretty smart of them. Weakening their team.
It's one of those scenarios that everyone was like, Tim Nanai-Williams, he's the last guy in the squad that they're going to be adding later. Now it's not looking so good. And I feel like Sopawanga didn't really step up at number 10, to be honest. In that Barbars game, he seemed a little bit quiet. Perhaps that was due to not really playing a huge amount for them. I was talking to someone about Hawke's Bay earlier on. I know it sounds like a weird transition, seeing as we're talking about international rugby, but they were confused at why Hawke's Bay hadn't been able to perform this year in the Bunnings NPC. And the reason is all of their backline, or a majority of their backline, have gone to play for the Samoan international side. Whether that's Naria Famai, Danny Tuala, all these boys who have brilliant games of rugby in the NPC and brilliant throughout Super Rugby Pacific. And it's just about gelling again at international level, which I believe that they are slowly starting to do. A lot of new names getting added in for Samoa. You mentioned it, Christian Lealiifano in that forward pack. I think they're still trying to confirm a few things when it comes to their loose forward trio. We know that Stephen Luatua will be about in that region, whether it's Alamana Matanga maybe that they look at as that number 7, or Jack Lamb if he does come into the side due to an injury. Could possibly also take that spot. Fritz Lee, he is lurking as well as... That is true, the youngster. Although I feel like at the moment he's probably fighting for that same spot that Stephen Luatua is. He's kind of lost his spot due to the youngster versus the veteran type thing. Fa'aso'o, he was very good in that game up against the Barbarians, the big man who made his Samoan debut this year. So I feel like this game might be closer than previous times that these sides have met, or if they had met a year or two ago, but I still feel Ireland will be the side that walk away with the victory, and probably, a few new tactics up their sleeve as well heading into that Rugby World Cup.
Yeah, nice. But yeah, no, we'll finish off then with the last game, guys, that we'll talk about for this one. Really, it's France versus the Wallabies. It's going to be pretty exciting actually to see this. Again, I'm not even sure if the Wallabies will go with a fully strength squad here, because they may also be in the impression similar to the box, where they may want to rest a few players and not go with, maybe make a few switches at the same time. So it's going to be interesting what they come up with. Again, the French, they can just, they can put whatever squad in and they'll be pretty happy, because it's a pretty good squad no matter what, really. Because I still think the French probably have the best depth, I'd say, in World Rugby, because even the third team is unbelievable for what it is. So it's it'll be good to see what happens here. Again, I don't know what to expect of this game, really. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think it'll be a close battle, or do you think it's going to be one of those games where one team just walks away with it?
I think whether Australia win or lose, the media will go after Eddie Jones again, because that seems to be
that's a normal anyway.
Thing to do.
That's like a bingo card where you're like, okay, got the bingo there with Eddie Jones criticized for how the Wallabies have played after a game. But yeah, I can definitely.
Although I did enjoy when he told a reporter to give themselves an uppercut. I felt like that was
I saw that.
It's such an Australian thing to do as well, which I absolutely.
Did you see his interview? Like, where he was like, it's like, I think it was it after the Australia announcement? I think it was maybe like when they announced their World Cup squad. It was on, I think it was on Stab when I was watching this, but like, they're like, yeah. You said like, so Eddie, what do you think about the squad? Like, there's a lot of players who've missed out. It's like, yeah, but I kind of had a general direction of what I wanted to do here. He was just so charismatic in the way he was like, yeah, to be completely honest, I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted. The guy was trying to get like a lot of like response from him, but he was like, yeah, I just knew what I wanted. It was like, okay, now back to you in the studio. It's just Eddie Jones in itself. But
I can tell you one thing, Tim. People always struggle to work out where your accent's from. You're certainly not Australian.
Oh no, I definitely not on that front. They're now going to think I'm probably, I don't know what accent that was, to be perfectly honest. But no. Look, I think at the end of the day, this result's gonna be pretty. I don't know. Will it be instrumental in terms of the results we'll see in the Rugby World Cup? It could be, because this is kind of the final game that France have, obviously, before they actually play the opening game against the All Blacks. So maybe they do actually go, kind of a full strength squad here. Maybe that's kind of like, this is the game where they get a lot of their players, kind of like the rust off their boots for the final time. I can definitely see Dupont playing this one for sure. I don't believe he played in the last one, if I'm not mistaken, against the Fijians. So. I can definitely see him being a part of this one. But besides that, I'm excited to see what the French can do. At the end of the day, normally I'd be more excited to see what the Southern Hemisphere nation could do in this one, which would obviously be the Wallabies in this case. But I'm actually more excited to see what the French can do, because this will be a game. It's kind of like the litmus test, to say the least. Like, what from this game, I'll be able to kind of dictate what I believe what will happen in the opening game against the All Blacks. And by the way, it's the same thing with the Bok game that we'll see against the All Blacks, tomorrow, to what I've just found out. So it'll be kind of, those are like the two litmus tests, to say the least, for what we'll see in that opening game. But I guess in terms of the result for this one, like, what do you think in terms of the prediction? Like, who do you think will come up on top?
France are always very hard to beat at home. And I think for that reason almost alone, you'd be backing the French to be able to get over the line here. Their depth is phenomenal. There's some brilliant work going on, not just from that four pack, but also if Jonathan Dante plays, you're getting a couple turnovers at least. So
He's good.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether or not the Australians will be able to match them in terms of the amount of times that the French are able to turn the ball over, although we have seen weaknesses in their last 2 games, and that one up against the Fijians, they just didn't seem like that same clinical French side, similar to Ireland, that we had seen in the past Six Nations competition. And I don't know whether or not that stylistically matching up with the Fijians was just awkward or, you know, something along those lines. But one thing that they need to make sure is that they don't have those awkward moments throughout their World Cup pool stage matches, because, you know, that is definitely a group that a lot of people feel is almost secure already for France and New Zealand. Same can't be said about South Africa's group, though. They feel that there's at least 3 sides there, with maybe an upset from a Tongan side every once in a while, just to put the curveballs out there. But yeah, I think it's going to be a good performance from France. Once again, we've seen Australia improve in all of their games so far throughout the year. And even though Eddie Jones is yet to get himself a victory as the coach, I feel like they're still going in the right direction. Rome wasn't built in a day. Australia rugby is not going to be fixed in a year. So he needed his time. He's slowly building. And now he's got Steve Hansen. He's just come into the camp as a little bit of an assister. I saw Dane Cole's. Yeah, I feel like Kiwis... It's similar to Brendan McCullum when he took up the England coaching job. Like, people weren't happy about that. They were like, oh, why has he gone overseas? He should be coaching the Black Caps, you know? He should be working in New Zealand. But if the job's not there available, like, you know, he's close mates with Eddie. I know that it annoys a lot of people, but I don't see too much wrong with it. At the end of the day, he's a rugby coach. Let him coach rugby. If he's not coaching the ABs, it's only if Australia start beating the All Blacks consistently that they'll be like, oh, he's letting out all the secrets. You know, he's told Eddie all the good stuff. But, yeah, I think it should be all right. Yeah, hopefully we'll teach Australia a couple of things, because at the end of the day, they are the Trans-Tasman rivals, but they're also just next door. You want to see them do relatively well, because they have struggled for quite a bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, if he even teaches them how to win the Bledisloe Cup, that's going to be the most biggest thing, I think, in terms of the All Blacks point of view. But yeah, no, we'll finish it there, guys. Again, this is episode 11, done and dusted. We'll give you guys obviously a review, of course, for these games after they're done. But besides that, it's been myself, Rugby Itch, as well as the Kiwi lads, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time.